And in this episode, we're going to separate fact from fiction. The fact: we have a horrendous fire centered in Los Angeles County in Southern California. That's a fact. The fiction is that somehow this is related to you. That's right, you. Your insatiable lust for fossil fuels. Your insatiable lust for having a house that's larger than you really need. Your insatiable lust for meat if you're a meat eater. See, it's all because of you and your lifestyle and the fact that you're so selfish. They say it's about human-induced climate change. In other words, you are the problem. That's what they're saying. Now, who's saying that? Well, really, they're saying this storm in Southern California is the result of climate change. That would be like me saying, let's just say the Chicago Blackhawks hockey team lost the Stanley Cup. Chicago Blackhawks lost the Stanley Cup. And I say they lost the Stanley Cup because that mascot of theirs, the Blackhawk, is racist. That's how absurd this is. First of all, there is no human-induced climate change. The climate always changes. And there have been big storms, and there will be big storms. And this wind event in Southern California is a wind event that's been taking place as long as humanity has been on the planet. It's called an offshore wind. It manifests when you have high pressure at the surface of at the Earth's surface, atmospheric high pressure at the Earth's surface, which in this case there was in the desert Southwest, and then low pressure offshore in the Pacific. Air naturally flows from high pressure to low pressure, just as one would expect. In this particular case, that would create a wind from the east. And when the pressure gradient is tight enough, those winds can roar. Now, in Southern California, when this happens, the winds come down the slopes of the mountains just east of the Pacific. Those mountains are a good 5,600 feet high, so over a mile high. They race down those westward-facing slopes, and as the air rushes down the slopes, it naturally warms and dries and creates tinderbox-like conditions. It can get very, very hot. These winds in Southern California are called the Santa Ana winds. They come down the mountain range and blow out towards the coast. They're the Santa Ana winds. I grew up in Southern California. They were around when I was a kid, and I'm getting to be an old guy now. The winds also do the same thing in Central California. They call them there, in Santa Barbara, for example, the sundowner winds. They occur in the San Francisco Bay Area. They call them the Diablo winds. It has nothing to do with the devil. There's a Diablo mountain that they rush down near Oakland, and it blows out to sea, and it gets hot. This is a natural weather phenomenon. Has nothing to do with climate change. Now, why are they saying this? Why is Gavin Newsom saying this? Why is Gavin Newsom saying this? Why is Karen Bass? But two absolutely inept politicians. You probably saw the video of Gavin Newsom, where that one particular resident in Southern California sees him. She stops her car. She gets out of her car. Her friend's videotaping the entire thing on the phone. And she says, Governor Newsom, why aren't you doing anything? What? And he says, I'm on the phone with the president right now. And then about 2 minutes later in the conversation, he said, no, like I was saying, I'm just about to call the president. So what is it? Are you on the phone with him, or are you just about to call him? Or are you making all this stuff up? Because Gavin Newsom, you're really good at that. What about Karen Bass? What an absolute blowhard. See, this is what, now I talk about this in my book, Climate Cult. It's interesting. The book is about the cult that believes you're the problem. Oh, this weather's racing out of control because of you and your lifestyle. Climate Cult. But in Climate Cult, I talk a lot about Karl Marx. You know, the original disciples of the climate change movement, the original disciples of the climate change movement were direct disciples of Karl Marx. You don't believe it? Get the book. But all that said, in this particular case, you have Gavin Newsom, who's lying. You've got Karen Bass, who it's almost right out of Marx's playbook, and every, quite frankly, radical dictator's playbook. Get a catchphrase and hang on to it and say it over and over and over again, and the people will eventually believe you. She keeps saying, we're in lockstep. We're in this together. What does that have to do with anything? Your administration blew it. You had an opportunity here to save the day by not cutting all of that money out of your fire department's budget. You had a chance to save the day by properly maintaining your water hydrant system. By now, of course, you've heard of that reservoir that went down in Pacific Palisades. I have a friend who is a water consultant, a private water consultant. He consults for municipalities all over the state. He told me he knew about that Pacific Palisades reservoir, which does things like feed fire hydrants. He knew that this was supposed to be under repair 10 months ago. He told me generally when these reservoirs are under repair, you can get the thing done in about 30 days because you want to get it back online. 10 months without that reservoir. Shame on this woman. And then this Senator Edward Markley, I don't even want to address him. He's an absolute lunatic. But this has nothing to do with climate change. Now, this has everything to do with sustainable development. Let me just talk about this for a moment. Sustainable development, and I write about this at briansussman.com. You can go to my last couple of posts. There on the homepage, you'll see them. I believe one post is called this Southern California fires, not climate change. Southern California fires, not a natural disaster. Because you can't even peg this on a natural disaster. Why? Because it's very likely, no one has a cause for any of these fires. We know that some of the smaller fires were set by idiots who decided to just light some matches and set things off. Little neighborhood arson. We know that some of the fires were started that way. But authorities in Southern California believe that some of these fires may have been started by arsonists. Why would that not surprise me? Well, I'll tell you why. Because in 2012, I wrote a very popular book called Eco-Tyranny. So my current book is Climate Cult. Prior to that, I had Eco-Tyranny. Before that, I had Climate Cult. Climate Gate. In Eco-Tyranny, I talk about eco-terrorism. In 2005, the number one domestic terror threat in the United States, according to the FBI, was eco-terrorism. Do you think those eco-terrorists have just reformed themselves and, gone to the good side? No, they're still there. And now they're probably working within government. And they're working within bureaucracy. And they had a heads up that this windstorm was coming. That windstorm began on Tuesday, January 7th. 5 days before that, the National Weather Service in Southern California issued a severe warning saying, we're about to get some offshore winds. Get ready, folks. It's going to be a big and bad windstorm. So the eco-terrorists, if indeed this is eco-terrorism, had a heads up of 5 days to plan for this. Now, why would eco-terrorists be so interested in this? Well, it gets back to sustainable development, as I mentioned just a moment ago. Sustainable development is a concept that was brought forth by the United Nations in 1983. Sustainable development means that if we're going to have energy sources powering the world, they must be sustainable. They would say fossil fuel is not sustainable. Why? Because they say we're going to run out someday. Natural gas included. We're going to run out someday. They would say the combustion engine, not sustainable because it's dependent on fossil fuels. You see what I'm talking about here? So they would say the only thing sustainable is wind power, sun power, solar power. They don't even like dams. They don't like hydroelectricity because that's not natural. And in fact, they want the dams to come down in the name of species. I'll get to that in just a moment. But this is a concept put forth by the United Nations in 1983. It became a part of the big Earth Summit in 1990, where all the Democrats from Washington, D.C. were there. Nancy Pelosi was just a champion of this whole thing. Folks, here's the bottom line. These people want to make you believe that there is climate change. They want to make you believe that you're the problem. They want to change your lifestyle. Here's what Al Gore said about sustainable development. I wrote about this in Climate Gate. He said, sustainable development will require a, quote, wrenching transformation of society. Oh, they'll still live in their mansions. They'll still drive their big cars. They'll still fly. They'll still live the life of Riley. But you and me, we're not worthy. We're not part of the in crowd. Tied to the hip of sustainable development is something called social equity. Social equity is not DEI. It's not anything like that. Social equity means this. This is according to the United Nations. Social equity says all species are created equal. Now, you might say, well, yes, of course. I mean, the white people are no different than the brown people, and the brown people are no different than the black people. No. That has nothing to do with social equity. Social equity means humans are no better than termites. This is why in California we're tearing down dams. This is why in California the richest agricultural land in the world, the breadbasket of the world, is being torn asunder by environmentalists who are tearing down dams. We have not, in the state of California, we have not had a new dam go online since, I think the last one was in the 80s, and that had been planned decades before. We are tearing down dams in California. We need to be building dams. We need to be building reservoirs. But the problem is the social equity part of environmentalism would say, well, that's not fair. That is not fair. You can't do that. I mean, we've got this fish in the San Joaquin Sacramento Delta called the Delta smelt. It's 3 inches long. And in the name of saving the smelt, I don't even know what they're good for. Bait. In the name of saving the smelt, we are thousands of acres of farmland have gone dry because we're taking that water and just washing it back out to sea. This is how insane these idiots are. Am I a little fired up? You bet. Because these people are out of their minds. And I thank God that there are a lot of voters in California who voted for these people who are waking up to the fact that they don't give a damn about you. They only care about their agenda. So now look at all those beautiful homes in Malibu. Lifestyles of the rich and famous. The environmentalists for years have wanted those houses gone. They didn't want them there in the first place because that's a very beautiful and environmentally sensitive area in their mind. And as a result, humans are an intrusion to that environment. And this is what they believe for Southern California as well. There are too many people there. I believe in the Los Angeles area, well, it's desert climate. I think it only gets no more than 12 inches of rain a year, maybe 13, but I think it might be closer to 10. It's a desert. But because of human ingenuity, we've been able to bring water into that region for people to live and thrive. The environmentalists don't like any of that. So this is on the Democrats. Completely. The way they handled this fire, mismanaged the fire, and all of their crazy environmental policies that have emboldened these eco-freaks to God knows what. Maybe in this particular case, arson. Some are also saying it could be a homeless fire or two that went loose during the winds. That's a possibility, and if that's the case, let's blame that on the Democrats as well. Because their policies, their family policies, or I should say their anti-family policies, at the root of homelessness is wrecked families. That's the root, wrecked families. You talk to anybody who's homeless. You talk to any drug addict on the street. It all goes back to their family. And who's been planning this family mess for the longest time? The Democrats with their absolutely asinine liberal policies. Friends, I just pray that people are waking up. We've got an opportunity to turn the page of history and see some unbelievably wonderful programs, policies, institutions put in place, starting at the federal level with Donald Trump and perhaps trickling down to the state government here in California and the crazy liberal state governments all around the United States who need a shot of truth and righteousness so that the people that they represent can live better. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. More on me at briansussman.com. Don't forget my book, Climate Cult. Climate Cult, Exposing and Defeating Their War on Life, Liberty, and Property. Go online to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also, the audio version of the book I actually narrate. God bless you, my friends. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.